again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection Show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Hi there, welcome to Author Roundup. My name is Emma, and I will be your host for today's episode. I have with me self-published author Marc Dickerson. Marc is a longtime school counselor, coach, husband, and father from Seaford, Delaware. With a background in education and counseling, Marc has dedicated his career to helping students grow both in and outside of the classroom. His newest book is called Priorities, Roles, and Goals, and we're excited to dive into his book and learn about his journey. Hi, Marc. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Good. Thank you for having me, Emma.
Yeah, of course. Can you start out telling us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, so what my book is about, it's called Priorities, Roles, and Goals. It's called The Program. And this is a program I developed over some years of experience when I was a school counselor. And what this book basically is, it's a life strategy type book, a life management tool that you can do to kind of just like get your life in order, kind of provide you with some direction. And it's good for just kind of keeping you track in life and just keep you moving.
Yeah. And so, what inspired you to write Priorities, Roles, and Goals? Was it being a counselor, or was there anything else that went into it that inspired you to write a book?
Yeah, I mean, this goes all the way back to my parents. You know, I had two great parents. I had my father and my mother. They were both teachers, and my
Oh,
father was a coach as well. So I was always around a lot of people. You know, watched my parents interact with people and saw how they taught and saw how my father coached, and you know the kind of effect that he had on people. So you know, as I went through life, I always wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a coach because I wanted to have that same kind of impact on people that my parents had. And I
mhm,
did that through teaching, coaching, counseling. And what inspired me to write this program, it's a lot of different things that I was taught growing up through my parents, teachers, coaches. And I just wanted to kind of put it in this package to help
mhm.
direct kids, adults to a more focused life, just try to kind of put everything in perspective, kind of keep everybody on track to do what they are meant to do, you know,
Yeah.
and so they can be a little bit more productive in life. But my inspiration goes all the way back to my parents and just how they interacted with other people, you know, and I want to be that same way, help people out and just help them get their focus in life.
So you compare organizing a closet or desk to organizing your life, one's life
Yeah.
book. What do you think, or why do you think that the latter is so much harder to do?
When you can visually see a desk and organize it, that's pretty easy. But what I want to do with this program of Priorities, Roles, and Goals is have people take a deep look into their life and figure out what do they need to do to kind of get their life on track, to keep moving forward, so they can be productive members to society, be productive, and you know fulfill the goals that they have set for themselves. It's a lot more challenging when you can't see in front of you visually what you have in front of you. It's a lot of abstract concepts when you're dealing with your life, setting goals, and just kind of trying to figure out where you want to go. But when you organize a desk and a garage, you know, you can figure out, all right, I want to put this object here, that object there. So what I try to do is translate that to your life. Okay, I got this priority. This is how important it is. Here's my roles from that priority. How am I going to fulfill these roles? And it's basically just by setting goals. So it's always a little bit more challenging organizing your life as opposed to something you can actually see. So I
Right.
like kind of relate that to, all right, now let's try to see what we're doing here in life.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's much more easier to relate it to something versus just trying to start from nothing, start from scratch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I feel like, many people struggle with balance in today's, very fast-paced world. What's the first step towards regaining control of your life?
Well, the first thing is just trying to figure out what your priorities in life. Like what is important to you? Like, for
Yeah.
example, is it your spirituality? Is it your family? Your work obviously has to be priority. And then other things like your community, you know, it's so important to be involved in your community to make it better, to share things that you've learned in life.
Hmm.
If you're a younger kid, volunteering, getting out there, just helping in your community is a very important thing. So the first step is to establish your priorities. And once you establish your priorities, that is who you are. That is what you stand for. And try to stay on that path of just focus on those priorities and not deviating from those priorities is going to be so important to your life because I've seen a lot of kids come through. Okay, they say they have this, this, and this priority, but then they're off doing something they shouldn't be doing, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's nowhere in your program. So, you got to stay focused on your program.
Hmm. Is it hard for people to truly identify what priorities they have and to start there, or is that the easy part?
I think for some people I've worked with, they really have a good concept of what's important to them. Other people need a lot of prompting just to try to figure out, okay, what's important? Okay, so your health is important to you.
For sure.
Your finances are important to you, and it's just a matter of how to putting those little topics into a priority. Like for example, one of my priorities, of course, is myself. You got to make yourself a priority.
Yes, true.
And in that, my priority of myself, is my mental health, physical health, finances,
Mhm.
friends, leisure time, and a lot of things like that. So you got to make yourself a priority and figure out, that you got to make sure you take care of yourself so you're able to help other people and so that you can be a little bit more productive and working with other people, helping other people out.
Mhm. So what do you think role or what role does self-awareness play in establishing priorities, would you say?
Well, self-awareness is a very tricky topic. Some people have very little self-awareness of what's going
Yeah.
around because they might be focused on this one little thing.
Yeah.
When you over focus on a certain priority, you're neglecting a whole lot of other priorities that should be important to you. For example, like when I was writing this book, I spent a lot of time down here in this basement writing, where I may have neglected some other things like my family, some things that I probably should be paying a little bit more attention to. But it's all about balancing out all your priorities, and you got to have self-awareness. Okay, so if I'm spending so much more time in this priority, I need to take a break, go upstairs, visit with my family for a little
For
bit, come
sure.
back down
Yeah.
and start writing. And they're all on the same page with me. They understand how this is important. But it's also having the self-awareness to make sure that people that are involved in your life understand, okay, here's my priority, here's what I need to be working on as well. So communication is a very important part to that self awareness piece.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, just mentioning or, speaking to your family about something that may um, take away from other priorities is important. Yeah, like communication is super important. You're right. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you walk us through how to set achievable goals that actually stick? I know we obviously, want to purchase your book, but can you give us a little insight into how to actually set goals that, you can become like a habit?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So first thing you got to make sure you're setting goals that are meaningful, and that's what this whole program is all about. So the first thing you want to do is set your priorities. So for example, let's take the priority of family, and then when you establish that priority of family, okay, then you got to figure out who you are in this family. Well, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a brother, I got extended family, I got in-laws. Now, what you want to do from there is set goals that align with those roles and priorities to make sure you have a successful relationship in those roles and priorities. So, for example, like when my kids were little, I always set a goal to have like a date night with my son or my daughter by themselves at least once a month, either going to the movies, before COVID, going out
Yeah.
to dinner or just doing something on our own. And as my kids get older, those kind of like evolve. So like now, one thing me and my son will do is go golfing or something like that. But it's that good one-on-one time. So you got to set meaningful goals that are aligned to your roles and priorities. And
Yeah.
early on in this program, one of the inspirations for starting this program is when I sit there and talk with kids about their goals or friends and people like that, they're setting goals that were like so far off from who they were. I'm like, well, why are you gonna waste your time trying to do that when it has nothing to do with your program? And just kind of bring a little bit of reality to the situation. Your goals should always have an alignment with your roles and your priorities. And a few tips and tricks on setting your goals is you always want to make sure they're measurable. Like for example, date night. That's a measurable goal. Okay, once a month we're going out to dinner, whatever. You can measure that goal. Of course, I want my kids to be successful. You know, but that's kind of like a little abstract goal that you have. But you got to make sure that the goals you set are rock solid that you can use for data purposes. You can see it. You know when you've done it.
Mm-hmm.
So the goals have to be measurable. The goals have to be somewhat realistic. Um, you always want to shoot for the stars, of course, but you also need to make sure that your goals are realistic. So, for example, when I was in high school, I wanted to play pro football. It doesn't matter how hard I worked day and night, I would never be a pro football player. That's just not my ability.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be kind of like an unrealistic goal. Um, so you got to make sure you do a good quality check to see what's in it for you. How are you going to reach this goal? Is it something that I can obtain or not? And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure that out. Some other little goal tips is again, just make sure they're measurable, make sure they're realistic, and again, make sure they align to your roles and your priorities. And what I in my book, I've identified three different types of goals. You got your repetitive goals. So a repetitive goal is something that I'm going to do every day, every week, or every month. For example, like a daily goal that I have, or a repetitive goal is like a daily goal. So a repetitive goal that I have is read a Bible verse, or it's another repetitive goal is have work out 2 times a week. And all those are aligned to my roles and my priorities. Of course, working out twice a week is aligned to my physical health role and my priority of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing is your alignment. You want to make sure those goals are meaningful, they line up to your program. Also, short-term goals are goals that you want to kind of accomplish between now and about a year out. So, for example, when I was working with kids, the goal is, of course, to pass that grade and move on to the next grade. They also set attendance goals, behavior goals, um, and goals to make sure they pass all their classes. And we dive deep into that on how to do it, what strategies you can use to make sure you can implement those goals. The third type of goal is called long-term goals. Long-term goals are like goals you want to set for like a year out through your lifetime. So when I first started in education, my goal was to get ever how many years in and retire. And during that 25, 26-year period, I got to make sure I do have a lot of little repetitive goals, short-term goals to make sure I get to that retirement piece. Again, taking classes, continue my learning, researching new strategies and stuff like that to work with the kids. So again, the three types of goals are your repetitive goals, short-term goals, and your long-term goals.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned goals that are measurable and realistic. Is that maybe a reason why some people feel overwhelmed with keeping track of goals because those two things aren't, related to their goals, or how are some ways that people may feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, and when you set up your program, you're going to have a lot of goals. You're going to have so many goals that it could be overwhelming.
Mm,
Some goals you're just going to have to put on the back burner, and it depends on what priority you're working on and what's important to you at that time. Um, I know, like for example, when I was in college, one of my roles or one of my priorities was education, graduating from college. During exam week, I had to put a lot of things to the side to make sure I was studying for exams, prepping for the exams, make sure I passed the exams to pass the class. So at that time, I couldn't worry about my goal of like maybe I had to sacrifice maybe a couple workouts, some
mhm,
physical health goals at that time, knowing that this was just a short-term situation where, like, as soon as the exam's over, I can go back to working out, working on my mental health goals, my physical health goals, things like that. And life is constantly changing, it's constantly evolving, and you have to use your best judgment. Okay, here's the goals I'm going to focus on right now. Um, After exams were over, I kind of, sometimes would focus on my role of leisure time, go out, have some fun, hang out with
yeah.
friends, things like that, which is also so very important. And when I'm helping people develop their programs, I always make sure there's a very, very important role for your social life.
Mhm,
Being
mhm,
social is so important, and you have to incorporate that into your program as well. As I call it leisure time, things that help you let off steam, help you like kind of recharge your batteries, kind of get away from the grind and help you just kind of recharge your batteries. So that the social aspect is a very important part of your program as well.
Yeah. Okay. And what's like one simple exercise or practice a listener could try today to start living with more focus and intention?
Again, we're gonna go back to what you said earlier, self-awareness.
Oh, yeah.
And, the self-awareness, it is just taking time to sit down by yourself and just kinda write out everything that's important to you, and then trying to place in your program. And so that's what this book does so well is helping you just kinda organize your life, kinda help you organize your direction, and, try not to stray off um that role or that priority.
Yeah. So maybe this next question is more to when you were, counseling and talking to students, but or adults, but what do you see as the biggest obstacle to people following through on their goals?
Well, the biggest obstacle that they face is when they face a little bit of adversity with their goals.
Mhm.
A lot of people set these nice goals, very attainable. Like I've had students say, "All right, I want to get a B in my chemistry class." All right, well, they fail the first test and
Mhm.
they would just want to give up. Like, no, 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 no.
Right,
You,
yeah.
you can't give up. You got to go passing this class with a B. Just because you have this little setback doesn't mean you stop your goal. But it's the adversity that people face and how they react to that adversity. One of the sections in my book is talks about how to deal with adversity, facing adversity. And so I used to have to talk a lot to my students when I was coaching football. Talk to them a lot about facing adversity and how you handle that adversity, and trying to just get over that hump of realizing, all right, I got a setback. Now, how do I fix it? How do I learn from it?
Yeah.
And my reaction to facing adversity has to be getting motivated. I've seen it so many times where people face adversity, they get frustrated or they can get intimidated, and you're gonna lose every time when you get frustrated and intimidated by your adversity. So what I tried to teach them is you gotta get motivated by your adversity. That student that failed that first test, all right, what can we do now? Okay, you need to spend extra time at home studying. You need to check in with some resources, get people to help you figure out the answers that you don't understand, going after school for extra help. And just this day and age, Google it. All you got to do is
Yeah,
Google.
for
We
real.
didn't have that privilege. We had to, like, try to find it in the
Right,
encyclopedia somewhere, so
right, yeah.
that this day and age, there's so much information out there that if
Mhm.
you wanna be good at something, research, 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 find out what's gonna
Yeah,
help put you over that edge, and when you face that adversity with a goal, stay motivated to push on, push through it, and
yeah.
you can't give up on your goals after your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th setback, and when you learn to fight those setbacks, that's when you become successful. That's when you become that person who's going to climb that ladder, who's going to get to the top of their field.
Mhm. I think also, like, as a student, as, someone in high school, also having a social inner circle or, family members that will, help you and encourage you too is also important as a kid, right?
Absolutely.
Having that needing that confidence maybe, that motivation too, I think is important when you're definitely in high school. So, yeah, that too, I
Yeah,
think.
and that's a great point. So you always got to have that circle of people that you trust. You got to have that
Mhm.
circle of people that you can rely on for extra help, whether it's a parent, teacher, coach, your peers, and what other resources you can dig up. A lot of these kids sometimes don't have a lot of support where
Mhm.
they're supposed to have it. And so they got to rely on their teachers, their coaches, mentors,
Yeah.
and whoever. But the important thing is no matter who you are, what age in life you are, you got to seek out these mentors. And
Mhm.
like even myself, 53 years old, I'm constantly seeking out mentors to help me with my business, help me with the book, doing classes with the book, and, I had a meeting with a guy last week who just told me a couple little things that just totally changed my mindset on how I need to run my business. So it's a constant um, thing that you got to do is always seek out mentors, seek out positive people that can help you and are willing to help you. And in turn, that's what we need to be to other people. We need to seek out people that need that help, need that a little bit of encouragement. And as a mentor, what you tell a kid, what you help a kid with, that can live with them for the rest of their lives. So,
Hmm.
whatever side you're on of that coin, being a mentor or a mentee is so important.
Hmm.
Again, just figuring out who's going to be there, who can I count on, who can count on me type deal.
Yeah. Um, so as a counselor, had you ever experienced students that maybe were trying to set goals and students that have like anxiety or like ADHD, have you ever like experienced like that type of situation?
Yes, yes, all the time. With adults just as well too.
Oh, for sure.
And so when you have those things, especially with ADD, anxiety, things like that. Again, that's why this program is so good because it's going to help
Mhm.
narrow your focus. A lot of times, what I've seen with students who have anxiety put so much on their plate. They might have
Right.
people putting so much on them on the outside. Might have parents that are constantly on about you got to get straight A's, where they get a lot of pressure. And what you got to do is figure out how to deal with that pressure. So I got a section in my book on how to deal with stress. And
Um,
if you can break that stress down, if you figure out how to deal with that stress, it can really help with your anxiety. And it's also, it's hard to live in other people's shoes. You don't know what other people have been through.
mhm.
So, like, their anxiety could be manifested from something that happened in their childhood, things like that. But
Mhm.
you just got to help encourage them, help them keep fighting through. And, the more narrow your program is, the more focused your program is, it might be able to dissipate some of that anxiety that they have. Um, it's that when you set goals, there's always going to be a little bit of anxiety. And, it's just how you deal with that anxiety and how you can kind of like, if you feel it coming on, what you can do about it. Also understanding what triggers that anxiety.
Mhm.
For example, before we got on the show, I was a little nervous,
Mhm.
not sure, but you just take a couple deep breaths and you just move on with it.
Mhm.
Some kids' anxiety, some adults' anxiety is way, way deeper than that, and I feel that, if you can deal with the stress, that's going to help with your anxiety.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's really helpful. So who did you have in mind when you wrote this book?
Myself, first of all.
Okay.
So, um, well, I have myself in mind a lot of the times, but what really triggered this book? When I was teaching social studies, I was teaching seventh grade social studies at Seaford Middle School, and I had this one student, great athlete. He's about 6'2" in the seventh grade,
Oh my
great
God.
basketball player. I mean, he was just tall. Well, he's about 6 foot, and just a very good basketball player. I had him in class, but the kid never did any homework, never did any kind of work, messed around a lot, and I just kept wondering why. What is going on here? What's missing in this kid's life that is preventing him from excelling in school, excelling in basketball? Because this kid had a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking about it, and I kind of reflected on a lot of stuff that I learned when I was in high school and college from my parents, teachers, coaches. And so I decided, and I kind of figured out that this kid has no priorities. He's just drifting through life, has no clue what's important to him. And
Hmm.
I don't even think basketball was important to him. So that's kind of how I say, all right, this kid doesn't have any priorities. He doesn't understand what's important to him. And then, I started thinking about it some more, and this kid doesn't understand his roles in life. Like, who is he? He's a student, he's a son, he's a grandson, and all this, but he doesn't know how to live up to those roles most effectively. And by the time we get to the goal part, the kid had zero goals to say, all right, I want to go to high school, play basketball. I want to graduate high school. I want to go play college basketball. The kid had no goals. And so if you don't have goals, say, hey, I want to graduate high school, I want to go to college, play basketball, then what you do in seventh grade is totally irrelevant because that's not going to give you the drive to excel in school, to work hard on the basketball court, and just do those little things that's going to enable you to go to college to play basketball. So
Hmm.
so like this kid kind of like helped me figure out, all right, hey, here's how this program is going to work. And I also have a section in my book called Discipline Drives Potential. And
Hmm.
I always had this kid in mind because the kid had a boatload of potential, a boatload of potential. But his discipline for that potential that didn't add up.
Hmm.
So, I kind of derived a little section in the book called Discipline Drives Potential. And what discipline does it take to reach potential? And it's just not on the court stuff. It's your home life, it's your schoolwork, it's everything rolled up into one. Where if you want to be successful in life, if you want to go to that next level, there's a lot of things you got to do right. And there's a
Hmm.
whole lot more things that you can't do wrong to
Hmm.
reach that potential. So when I go around talking to some teams and stuff like that, I occasionally talk about how that discipline would drive that potential. And,
Hmm.
I grew up around, when I was in high school, I grew up around three pro athletes. And I kind of saw what it took for them to get to that level. It was talent, it was hard work, it was doing everything right in school, out of school, home life. You got to be that complete person if you want to move on to that next level. And that's
Right.
what a lot of kids this day and age don't understand is um, when they would come to me and say, "Hey, I want to be a pro football player." Okay, well, how many hours are you spending in the weight room? How many hours are you spending out on the field doing quick feed drill? Uh, None. So, well, guess what? It's not going to
Yeah.
happen. It's you got to have that discipline to do a lot of things, more things than that next person is going to do that wants your position at that college. So
Hmm.
you got to have discipline in all aspects of your life if you want to move up to the top.
Hmm. Yeah. And so I see that you published a book in 2017 with the same title. Is this book a second edition or?
Oh, well, this is the first edition of the program. So what I
Okay.
did in 2017 and a couple other books I have out, they were attached to agenda. So as I was writing this book, I was like, I want to get it out, kind of get the name out. So what I did with I call it a teaser copy. So I just put part of the program in these books and had it tied to an agenda. I was just kind of experimenting around to see how that would work. And so I stopped doing that just to focus on the whole program. And
Hmm.
that's what this book
Okay.
is. It's the complete program. The other books that I published before were just like partial snippets of what the program
Oh,
was that
okay.
I was
Gotcha.
developing at the time.
Okay. So how long did it take you to complete the program, and when did you start writing it?
Uh, well, I started that initial start was back when I was teaching seventh grade social studies was around 1999, 2000. But I didn't get serious about writing the book till about 10 years ago. So it's been about a 10-year process when I said, all right, I want to write a book. And
Hmm.
then I'd write a little bit, take some time off. And then like really the last 3 years is when I got really serious and started writing a lot. And then I would change this, change that. It just got so daunting that I
Yeah.
gotta stop. This is what it's going to be, because you look at it and like, all right, I need to change this. So after a while, you just say, all right, here's what it is. I want to put this out there, and
Hmm.
so it is about a good 10-year process from beginning to end. And during that process, I got a good team put together, a good team of editors, uh,
Hmm.
a good team of people who would like discuss the concepts with me and kind of go over the whole concept development piece of it.
Hmm.
So I have a really good team put together that would assist me on this book.
And so how did it feel for it to completely be done and to see your book for the
Oh
first
God,
time?
it was a load off.
Yeah, I
To
bet.
finally get it out, see it on Author House published, it was such a good feeling, and but immediately I'm on to the next project. It's
Yeah.
really not, I enjoyed working hard with this book, but I already got like my next two projects in mind on what I want to put out next.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what was the most, or what part or section of your book do you think is the most important, or what was the most fun part of your book to write?
Well, a lot of sections were fun to write. As far as important, the whole book is important. It all wraps up. Every piece is
Mm-hmm.
connected to one another. Every piece is a bit of advice that you can learn from. Um, I guess the fun part of writing the book, well, I got some sections in there that are like personal stories, I call them,
Nice.
and just writing about some of my personal stories that of examples of what I went through,
Mhm.
and um, well, gosh, one of the stories I talked about is how to deal with adversity, and I wrote about, you know, Like I'm the worst fisherman in the world. I can't fish to save my life. And so my kids decided they want to try fishing. And I was like, oh gosh, all right, let's
Oh,
go.
no.
And so we got on the fishing poles and all that. And, I'm trying to set the lines up for them, and the line gets all caught up. And oh my gosh, I just was a very bad example for my kids. And it's like, I need to pay attention to my program. You got to get motivated by this adversity. Oh gosh. But, I
Yep.
wrote a lot of personal stories of like, we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But,
Right.
we all live and we learn,
Mhm.
so this book kind of has a lot of great advice. But in one section of the book, I kind of just stepped back and explained that like it's all fine and dandy that you read about all these concepts, but it's nearly impossible to live your day, every single minute of living up to these concepts.
Yeah.
We're all
Right.
going to slip, we're all going to fall. And it's a matter of, all right, let's pick myself back up. Let's get myself back on track. You know,
Right. Yeah, that's
so
true.
it's always a challenge. And nobody's going to be able to live 100% perfect life. But
Mhm.
the main thing is how you bounce back, how you get going again.
Yeah, I love that. Was there a part of your writing process was the most difficult or
Uh yes, I like for example, I'm a terrible writer. I know what I want to say, but getting it on paper the right way is a challenge. So like for example, when I was in high school, I was good at math. I was good in science. I was terrible in my English class. If my English teacher saw that I have a book published, I'll probably have a heart attack. I'm just my grammar's terrible. I'm a terrible speller. But part of this program is talks about using your resources. All right. So I
Mhm.
got this idea. I want to put a book out, but I'm a terrible writer. So how am I going to overcome that? Um, I'm not going to say disability, but that
Hurdle? Yeah.
yeah, and how am I going to overcome this? Well, again, I put a good team together. I had a great team of editors that did a lot of edits on my book, and through them, I was able to put a lot together. Also, I ran some things through Grammarly just to make sure
Right.
all
Good team.
everything was like right,
Mhm.
So, again, use your resources. You got a goal in mind, use your resources, use your people. There's so much out there on the internet, AI, things like that. Use your resources to get to that goal, to help that goal get complete.
Mhm.
Being a terrible writer, I use that as an example. Like when people are struggling with their goals, it's like, listen, I wrote a book. My grammar's terrible. I'm not the best speller in the world, but it got done. It
Yeah.
got done. And here's how it got done.
Mhm.
So just because
Love
something
that.
that looks impossible doesn't mean that it is impossible.
Mhm.
You got to reach out. You got to find the people, seek the people out that can help you reach your goal.
Mhm. Yeah. And so, what's the nicest feedback or review you received about your book?
Um, eh, I've had a lot of people, talk to me about, man, I didn't know life could be so focused.
Mhm.
Boxing everything up. All right, here's what I'm doing. Just kind of boxing everything up. And one of the most important comments I had is people's like, okay, I realize I need to eliminate this, this, and this out of my life. If I want to
Mm.
be productive, I need to eliminate these certain things. And that's what this program's all about is not what you put into this little program, but what you keep out as well. And sometimes you got to take a good look of who you're around, what activities you partake in,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
what you need to eliminate. So some of the best compliments have been, all right, yeah, I narrowed down what I needed to do, but I'm keeping this, this, and this out so I
Mhm.
can make sure my goals are being met, make sure my roles are what I want to do. My priorities are in the correct order and what I want my life to stand for. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of aspects on what you want to keep in and what you want to keep out of your program as well.
Mhm. Have people or students come to you and told you, how much the book has impacted them?
Well, when I was counseling, I had a lot of comments from students like, "Yeah, this is easy now that I got direction."
Yeah, for sure.
What a lot of people need is just a little bit of traction. All right, we need to go from point A to point B.
Mhm.
Can't go from point A up here, down here, back down there to get to point B. It's got to be a direct line. And so when the students would come to me and say, I didn't know this could be so easy. Like, yeah, all you did was make a little tweaks in your thought process. You made some little tweaks in how you go about some things, and you just kind of streamlined that energy onto what's important. So,
Mhm.
I always like to get those compliments that, yeah, this program can work, and it does work if you learn how to streamline your thought process, if you learn how to streamline what you want to get out of your life.
Mhm. How does that feel to be, an impact on students where you're getting them, before they go off to college, they start their careers, they can take the tools that, you use to help them in their, future families and future careers.
Yes.
How does that make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel very good that I can contribute to them being a positive person in society, being able to help reach their goals, things like that. And it goes back to, when my father was a high school football coach, high school baseball coach, I get people coming back to me all the time saying, "Man, your dad was like a father figure to me."
Oh,
That's the best
that's a
compliment
compliment.
you can
Yeah,
get about a parent,
for
and
sure.
so I wanna be that for my kids too. I want somebody to come back and tell my kids, "Man, your father really helped me.
Yeah,
He's like a father figure to me, helped me get my life in organized." That's something that you want your kids to hear as well, and their
yeah.
kids to hear, and right on down the line.
Hmm.
So that's kinda like an inspiration I have for, working with people, and, just watching my parents as teachers and coaches,
Yeah.
just how they would help people, and what those people meant to them, and, how those people appreciated what my parents did for them as well.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a writer working on their first book?
Oh, good luck. Good luck.
Good luck.
Well, and again, I'd highly recommend before you write your book, make sure you get your program down and
Yeah.
make sure that you're able to balance those priorities. Like, for example, one of my priorities is the Priority Roles and Goals program.
Hmm.
And so, again, going back to what I talked about earlier, just being able to balance that priority with other priorities, such as your spirituality, your family, your work. Um, what I really enjoyed doing the most when I was writing this book is on a Friday when I got done teaching, I'd come home and I would literally work all through the night. That's when I felt like I had the best concentration. I'd start work at maybe 8 o'clock and go all the way through the night till 8 o'clock the next morning. I did that a lot of times,
Gosh.
and that's where it was quiet. I was able to concentrate. You got to put yourself in that little zone. Like a lot of athletes talk about, man, I was in that zone. I was in that zone this game. Same thing for a writer. You got to make sure you put yourself in a position to get in that zone. And my zone was through the night. And I used a lot of the techniques I used for my stress relieving, such as I had a candle burning, had a scent that I enjoyed.
Hmm.
I had lighting in my basement that was soothing to me, and that just kind of helped me get in the zone to work through the night. And
Hmm.
plus, a couple energy drinks helped as well.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed doing that because it was kind of like so refreshing to be able to just sit there and be able to concentrate without any distractions.
Yeah.
Uh, so that'd be what my main advice is: get yourself in a place where you can avoid distractions, where
Hmm.
you can focus and kind of get in that zone. And it's very stressful writing a book, so you got to implement some of those stress relieving techniques that I talk about in this book, and whether it is something that is in the background, like a fan buzzing, some white noise in the background. I had a Spotify playlist that I would play and listen
Hmm.
to music kind of like just in the background.
Hmm.
So I kind of focus on all my senses to help relieve the stress with the hearing, the smell of a candle, things like that, the lighting in the room. And you just got to put yourself in a position to kind of get into that zone.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, that's good advice. So I know you mentioned that you have some projects already that you're working on. What are some personal goals you have for the rest of this year, or some, other book goals that you have
Yeah.
for
So my goals right now for the Parties, Rules, and Goals book is, of course, sell the books. Also, I'm starting to do classes with the book. Uh,
Oh, nice.
so to help people work through the program.
Hmm.
And so I started some classes. I want that list to grow and grow. I want to help more and more people. So what I do, I offer a class. It's an online class, and I have different packages that you can purchase to do the class. Um, Speaking engagements. I want to do speaking engagements. I've been going around to some of the like local sports teams, giving them some a little bit of advice on like how to deal with adversity, the discipline drives potential speech. A lot of the things I did when I was coaching football was giving these speeches, just trying to help them with their mindset, help them with a little bit of motivation. So my goal again with this book is again continue to sell the book, do author meet and greets. I got some author meet and greets lined up, doing my classes, speaking engagement, things like that. Now down the road, in about a year or so, going to I'm working on a journal for the Priorities, Roles, and Goals program. A
Nice.
journal that has a lot of the concepts in this book in it on one side of the page, and the other side of the page is where you can do your journaling. So
Mm,
it's kind of like has a lot of the aspects of the program in it, but it has a lot of your personal information, a lot of things that you can put in personally. So I've been developing and working on this journal as well. So I expect that to be out probably about a year from now.
okay.
Then my next project after that is what I'm calling, it's called a 365 journey. It's a every day you got like a little assignment. And
Wow.
the assignment has to do with like your mental health, physical health, all the way through your finances. Just so the concept of this book is like in the beginning, I'm just going to assume you're a mess, no goals, nothing. And so what we do each day, work through the things that you have set up in your program to at the end of that first year that now, okay, we got good control, we got a good mental health routine, we got good physical health routine, I got my priorities set, so we want to start here and in a year's time, finish here a whole lot better than where we started. So
Mm,
again, it's the Priorities, Roles, and Goals journal that I'm developing, and the Priorities, Roles, and Goals, it's called the 365 Journey. And again, it's just going to touch on a whole lot of concepts to little step at a time. And where I see a lot of people messing up too is when they try to make too big of a jump. You know,
yeah.
when you like, for example, if you're trying to lose weight, trying to um, get a degree. It's got to be one little step at a time on what
Yeah.
you can handle. And what this 365 journey is going to do is just do one little step each day in a certain category. Not all of them, but just, all right. So for my mental health today, I'm going to come
Yeah.
up with 3 things I can do next week that's going to help contribute to my mental health goals. So it's just a very slow pace program for over a year that if you stick with it for a year, you're going to be a whole lot better off than what you were at the beginning of the year. So that's
Right.
the project I got coming.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I like the 365 journey. That's really, I feel like a lot of people will like that. And also obviously, it's not like what are those called? Like in the beginning of the year when you get like an agenda or like a planner and you get it
Yeah,
in January and then so it's like what if I want one, in July? So the
yeah.
365 is good because you can, do it starting any time of the year.
Anytime. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
start
that's
it
perfect. That's
anytime of
great.
year as soon as you pick it up. So yeah.
Yeah, I
So
love that.
that's about a couple years out on that project.
Cool.
So
Okay.
get that journal out first, then do the 365 journey.
Nice. All right. Well, those are all great goals. I love that. So I just have one last question for you before we
Okay.
go, and that is, I've heard a lot of great advice and tools and strategies on how to organize your life and have those priorities and goals. But what is the number one message that you would hope readers take away after reading your book? What would that be?
Well, the number one thing they got to take away is how to put your life in order
Mm.
so that you can be productive, not just for you, but for the other people around you.
Oh, yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're mentally a mess and can't focus, can't concentrate, you're not going to be able to help other people. And that's one of the most important things you can do here in life is to help other people, be a resource for other people. And getting your own life in order is going to enable you to do that. Um,
Hmm.
and so many people are just so scattered that hey, you got to really get yourself focused, you got to figure out what's important to you and stick to that program. um, and of course, people, you're going to stray from your program every now and then, but you got this base here that you always come back to, and
Hmm.
that you've developed. You put a lot of hard work into developing your program, and you've got to stick to it as much as possible. What people really need to get from this program is that, hey, I can be doing a lot better than what I am now. A lot of people
Right.
that think they're successful, but their success is in their workplace. Like, you
Mhm.
get your CEO of this company, but you haven't talked to your kids in 3 weeks. That balance isn't there. So in this program, you got to have balance across your priorities.
Mhm.
So you got to figure out what's important to you, and you got to create that balance. And
Mhm.
if when you don't create that balance, then people that rely on you are going to suffer. They're not
Right.
going to get
Yeah.
the best you. So when you set your program, now the next step, how do I balance this out? And that's tough. And a lot of times people don't understand how important that balance is, and
Mhm.
keeping all your priorities in check.
Mhm. Yeah, it made me think of just, try and be the best version of yourself for yourself and for, your family too. And yeah, like the
Absolutely.
people around
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what it boils down to. You got to be the
Yeah.
best version of yourself, and be authentic, and stick to your program.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mark, for your time today.
Yes. Thank
I
you for
feel,
having me. And I
yeah.
appreciate you having me on your show. And thank you again.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to mention or share today before we go?
Yeah. So if you visit my website, www.prglife.org, and just get on there, take a look. And if you're interested in classes, there's a little button to sign up for classes. And, if you need anything, my email's on that website as well. Feel free to email me. But visit my website, check it out. And, if you're interested in doing any public speaking with your company, your team, whatever, just feel free to give me shoot me an email.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Good luck with your book. And, I see this, impacting and helping a lot of people take control of their lives. And I hope that, if you're listening and you liked Mark's book and you feel inspired and wish to learn more, you can go to authorhouse.com to purchase it. And also, it is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to Mark for joining me. And thank you for listening and tuning in. And I'll see you next time.